Hi everyone, welcome to another new episode of the Enlivened Woman podcast. Today I am going to speak about Neptune in Aries and how I believe that this is the return of goddess worship. So this is a transit that is happening for the next 14 years. And Neptune moves around the zodiac wheel for like 100. It takes, I think it's roughly around 146 years in total, something like that, something similar to that. So we have this new cycle that began last Tuesday, which was the when was it? The 27th of January. So we have this like new cycle that is beginning of Neptune. And there is multiple reasons why I feel that this is the return of goddess worship. Um, so Neptune, if you don't know, is associated with spirituality. It's associated with God, creator, source. Neptune is like associated with the cosmic realm. There is like oneness, there's no separation. And it is connected to like our creator, to creation. So I have been like, this has been on my mind a lot. And I've been not just through looking at transits, but actually intuitively having this sense, this feeling, this known by what I'm feeling internally, by what I'm feeling guided to do, by what I'm seeing other women are being called to do, and the things that are coming into my awareness more. So I'll give a little short background on goddess worship. And if you had my previous episode, I spoke a lot about it also. Like, but I'm gonna be speaking more on like the transit of Neptune in Aries today and how it like it's what I feel it's going, how I feel it's gonna play. So thousands of years ago. Way before Christianity, way before a lot of religions, there was it wasn't a male deity who was worshipped, it was a female deity that was worshipped. So during those times, there was the matrilineal line. It was the matrilineal rulership. And this wasn't necessarily about like, hierarchy. It was more about living in cooperation, living more balanced, more peaceful life. So women took seats of power in like politics, in religion. Women had the money. When when parents passed away, the everything would have got passed on to the female rather than the male. When people were married, it was the woman's name that was taken and not the man's name. And it was very much working with cycles, like the cycles of the earth, the cycles of the moon, the women's cycle. Sacred sexuality was very much a big part of this lifestyle as well. Like there was no shame in sex because there's no shame in sex. It was very much like sex is a part of creation. Sex is a part of life, and utilizing like sexual energy as a part of healing and liberation and living. So what I what I'm feeling about this transit, that's a 14-year transit as well. It's like this remembrance of the goddess worship, okay? Because Aries is all about self-identity. Like when we move into Aries, it's a new cycle. Aries is the first now um, is now the first sign of the zodiac. Wasn't always the first sign of the zodiac. Taurus was when we were in the matrilineal rulership. And if you go back to my last podcast, I was speaking about that also. But yeah, so Aries is about new beginnings. So anytime a planet enters Aries, it's a new cycle is beginning. So Aries is all about the self, and it's about self-identity and self and discovering things about self, about oneself. And it's about like leadership and being assertive and being like taking action. So with when the goddess was worshipped, it's very much like, like in Christianity and in a lot of religions, it's like God is outside you. God is a man, a white man in the sky, that is outside you. But with the goddess worship, it's about discovering the divinity within. It's about discovering your like you are fully human and fully divine. That God is not separate from you, but you are actually God. And not from, I don't say that from a God complex, um, coming from a God complex. I say that coming from a, like, God is experiencing oneself through you. And like we are not separate from God. We are all one. So that means that like God cannot be separate from you. God cannot be outside of you. God cannot be another um being outside of you, but God, you are God. Um and you're also, so you are divine. So with the goddess worship, it's all about like finding your divinity within. And that's really what I've started to realize, that that's what goddess worship is, because I'm really starting to, you know, um, practice goddess worship and practice worshiping myself. So this is exactly what Neptune is. So Neptune is all about spirituality. And Neptune is about like source, creator. Neptune is like the cosmic realm. And there is no separation. And it's about illusions. So now that Neptune has entered into Aries, my feelings on this, because Neptune is about like your intuition as well. So we look to Neptune being in Pisces. Neptune is very much like, similar. It's a co-ruler of Pisces. And it is like Pisces is oneness. Pisces is spirituality. Pisces is, like energy work, intuition, oneness. But with both Pisces and Neptune, we come with rose-colored glasses. So we had this transit in Pisces for years, and that was when a lot of people started to find spirituality, myself included. But for a lot of us, again, myself included, when we find spirituality, we think that it is, um, we tend to go to the upper chakras. We want to ascend and leave the body. Whereas when I began to study sacred sexuality and do my training, it's like actually, if you want to ascend, you have to descend into the body. And we had this um time when Neptune was in Pisces, where we were worshipping gurus. Well, I personally wasn't. But there was a lot of people being put on a pedestal because of like, their connection to God. And I say that with oh my God, I can't, rabbit ears, that's quotations. I say that with quotations. Believing that we believed that some people were just because they were so spiritual, they said they were so connected, they'd meditate for so long that that meant that they were more connected to God than I or you. So you have to put them on a pedestal. But those rose-colored glasses are coming off now because we've left Pisces. And, we have heard recently that on the Epstein list is the Dalai Lama and, oh my God, what's the other? I can see his face, Deepak Chopra. They were on his lists. So for a lot of people, we worshipped that I didn't. For a lot of people, and it doesn't matter if you did, but this is just examples. For a lot of people, they were being worshipped because they were seen as someone superior who has this connection to the divine. But what were they doing with that power over? Like they were with that power that they had, they were using it in bad ways, in horrible ways. So that's exactly what, like with Pisces, like Pisces, we come with rose-colored glasses. And I had this experience a couple of months ago, and it really showed me about the people in the spiritual industry, how, there is a lot of wolf in sheep's clothing. And we are going to see this more being uncovered now as we move into Neptune in Pisces. And this Neptune in Pisces is about trusting ourselves. But I wanted to get to a particular transit that is happening in February that is just kind of like, for me, like confirming again what I feel of the goddess worship being um returning. So we have Saturn meeting Neptune on the 20th of February. So Saturn's all about tradition, and Neptune's about spirituality, and Neptune is about religion. So I remember a couple of months ago when we had like Saturn entering into Neptune a few months back, was dipping its toes in before it went retrograde back into Pisces. And I was on my astrology course and we were speaking about this transit, and it came up like about how we were noticing that traditional religion was like Christianity was starting to return. And I had like you see this even when I go into town now, it's like there's people asking you, do you want to come to church? There's lots of people preaching and whatever. But for me, over the last few weeks, yeah, that is like Christianity will get this rerun because it's traditional religion having this like in Aries, which is a new chapter, a new beginning. So we may see this rise of like religion starting to return again. And but it'll be this like new cycle of it. But why I feel that this is got to do with like the goddess worship returning is because yes, Neptune and Aries, they meet in conjunction every 32 to 34 years, okay? And a conjunction means that both planets meet at the exact same point. So with but right, it hasn't happened in at Aries 0 degrees. And I've looked up and I'm getting like mixed answers, but it's been between 6,000 to 9,000 years that this conjunction has not happened. Now, this is long before Jesus, long before Christianity. And that's like it was Christianity that came along to wipe out the goddess. It was the patriarchy. It was religion that was man-made. It was religion that focused on like the male deities that came to wipe the goddess worship out. So because Saturn and Neptune are meeting together at 0 degrees Aries, that hasn't happened between 6 to 9,000 years, and Saturn, Neptune, and Neptune in Aries is all about traditional religion returning. This is the most traditional religion that there ever was the goddess worship. So this is really why this is reaffirming to me what I'm feeling and what I'm sensing internally by looking at these transits. So this with the, as I said, with the goddess worship, it's not about like finding God without you and seeking someone outside. It's about like worshipping the goddess, which is worshipping yourself and finding your divinity within, finding that you are not separate from God, you are not separate from Creator, but you are the Creator. And this is very much like, like that Aries energy. This is where we discover more about ourselves. This is where we discover our autonomy. This is where we discover our power and how we discover our power. So goddess worship is, yes, it's about honoring the goddess. And the goddess worship is about prayer, which is it's like, praying, which is Neptune, worshiping, which is Neptune. So if we look at Neptune and Aries is about self. Neptune's about worship, devotion to self, worship and self. That is what the goddess worship is about. It's about worshiping our body. It's about, connecting to like worshiping our womb, worshiping our cycle, worshiping and connecting to the moon, to nature, to the earth. That is all what goddess worship is. And that is how we discover with Neptune and Aries. This is how, when we begin to discover, when we begin to worship ourselves, when we begin to worship our bodies, when we begin to worship our womb, this is when we begin to discover who we truly are. Now, with this transit of Saturn in Saturn and Neptune connecting, conjoining, I found it like so interesting because when like Neptune is associated with like dissolving illusions, and Saturn is also about like conditioning. We inherit things from Saturn. Saturn's very karmic. Saturn's associated with our ancestors. Saturn's associated with like conditioning that we get from society, from our families, from our ancestors. I found it very interesting that just like, what is it, like 3 weeks after we hit Neptune entering into Aries, we have this conjunction of Saturn and Neptune meeting up. And this to me is because is saying that dissolving old identities that is also going to happen with this conjunction, dissolving our old identities. And dissolving, as I said, Neptune is connected with dissolving, like removing limitations, removing illusions. Saturn is associated with conditioning, and Aries is about your identity. So this, we cannot go into this transit the old way. We can't, you know, we can't enter into this 14-year period with all of this baggage from everything and everyone else. Like for me, I have some notes written down, like, for me, like the goddess, and this is me, again, you can go back to the last episode, like, the goddess, when she was worshipped, like, it was Venus. It was, yeah, Venus, the planet. But Venus is Isis. Venus is Mary Magdalene. Venus is Inanna. So when I was done like extended study on Venus, this is what I was like unearthing. This is how more I started to come more into the goddess worship as well. So, but if we break Venus down, right? So Venus would have been back when the goddess was worshipped, the moon was worshipped, Venus was worshipped, everything like the sun was worshipped as well, but it would have been a female god. But if we just stick to like Venus, right? So Venus, if we look at her astrologically, like Venus is the representation of the divine feminine. So the goddess, Venus is connected to being in the body, sensuality, pleasure, magnetism, value, self-worth, money. So if we break this down and we look at the goddess worship, and if we look at Venus as the goddess, so Venus wants you to, right, worship yourself. She wants you to connect to your body, to be in your body, to connect to pleasure, to slow down, to connect to your cycles, because Venus is all about fertility, isn't she? Um, to connect to your cycles, to connect to the earth. Um, and that really fills your cup up. That really, she is connected to pleasure and sensuality. So she very much wants you to be in your body, to connect to your body. Venus is connected to sexuality, to sensuality. So she wants you to be in your body. She wants you to be experiencing pleasure. She wants you to give to you. When you begin to do that, when you begin to worship yourself, worship your body, you begin to increase your self-worth, which means you begin to value yourself, which means that your feminine magnetism begins to radiate, that you don't chase, you attract, that you begin to open up your heart to receiving all of your desires. This is all Venus. This is all what Venus represents, that you begin to become magnetic to your desires, that you begin to receive all you want, including money, because that's what Venus is. But you have to learn to become magnetic to it, stop chasing it and opening your heart to receiving it. That is all what Venus is. That is all what the goddess worshipping is. You know, when we worship ourselves, that's exactly what happens. Like, that is exactly what happens. All of the Venusian themes expand. All of the goddess themes expand. You know, so this is very much like, this is what I intuitively can sense from this transit. And like, you know, Neptune is all about like intuition. Going back to, you know, the Saturn and Neptune conjunction and that conditioning that needs to be dissolving old identity patterns, behaviors, conditioning. We cannot, it's like the cosmos, what's going on up in the cosmos, it's not that the planets are making us do anything. It's like, as above, so below. They're just mirroring us, what we are feeling and what we are moving through on a personal level and a collective level. So what we have, who we have been before, we cannot continue to be that person if we desire to move forward in a new way. And at the moment, I can sense, me personally, all of these old conditioning and all these old ways of like over giving, being burnt out, not valuing myself, not seeing not feeling worthy. All of these things are coming up right now. And that's because when this transit happens on the 20th of February, the beginning of it, Saturn in and Neptune, these old identities are going to begin to fade and dissolve away because they were all an illusion anyways. You know, I am worthy, you are worthy. I don't have to overgive to prove that I'm worthy. I don't have to overgive to prove that I love somebody. I don't have to burn myself out to prove that I'm worthy to be successful. So these are all things that I've been moving through and I'm continuing to move through. And I had this I had something come up the other day where I could see like my ego was allowing a lot of distraction to happen. And I was allowing myself to be distracted by other people. But and I could also see this like savior complex playing out. Again, I do have a savior complex that I'm really trying to um move through. So yeah, this savior complex coming up of like, well, like if I don't help them, who's gonna help them? And this was regarding like family, like but then underneath it all, when I when I excavated all of that, I was like, but who am I without them? But who am I without the conditioning? But who am I without those patterns that were passed on to me? But who am I without those beliefs that were passed on to me? And this is where it's like, well, actually, but who do I get to be without all of this? So it was like I was being shown, and I know that like I want to discover who I am without all of that. I have things that I want to do that they need to be removed in order for me to discover who I am. So, but what I could, and this is what came through today, right? So, yeah, who am I without those conditionings? That's very much of like, this Saturn and Neptune transit that is happening that is going to help you dissolve the illusions of uh, like who you think you are, so you can discover who you truly are. So you can truly discover that you are source and nothing is outside of you. And so you can begin to witness yourself as the creator of your life. So when I was tuning in, I was like, this Neptune and Aries transit, it's like, so Neptune is limitless, as humans, we are limited, but Neptune is limitless. So, um, you know, if I remove all of these conditionings that Saturn and Neptune is going to help me, Saturn conjunct Neptune in Aries is going to help me do. It's like, yeah, who am I without all this conditioning, right? But all the possibilities of like what I get to do, who I get to be are limitless. Who am I without all of those, you know? And who am I when anything becomes possible? Because I am the creator, because I am source, so that gets to be exciting as well. So yeah, it might be like that we're moving through some sticky shit right now that's very uncomfortable. But it's for our benefit, it's for our evolution. And if we think of us women, we are made, not we are made, we are conditioned to believe that we have to overgive, that we have to help others, that we have to keep putting our foot in front of one foot in front of each other and taking on the world and, you know, helping everyone but ourselves. And that leads us to burnout, you know, um, and it's very much like, you know, um, women releasing that conditioning, that we have to give and give and give and give and be left without nothing. Because if we think of goddess worship, it's like, no, you have to worship yourself first. You have to fill your own cup up first. And then you can give from a place of overflow. And this is really like, what goddess worship teaches us. It teaches us to, not be given everything to everyone else but oneself. It actually teaches us to worship yourself, to give yourself exactly what you need to worship yourself, you know. to devote your time, your practices, your rituals, like whatever you want to yourself. And this is how you begin to connect to your like limitless energy. Um, so yeah, so I wanted to touch on the point of like, you know, we'll get into the nervous system a bit, and how I believe again the nervous system is connected to like the goddess worship and connecting to females being in power, because Aries is all about sovereignty as well. So it's saying to us that we need to, like with this transit, it's helping us reclaim our sovereignty. And with Neptune, as I said, it's an evolutionary planet and it wants us, it's connected to oneness, and there's no boundaries in Neptune. But actually, as a human, we need boundaries, don't we? We need to be able to say no. We need to be able to, like, if we don't want to do anything, we don't have to. And with this, like with Neptune, the evolutionary process, one of the evolutionary processes too, so that you discover boundaries. And with it being in Aries, Aries has boundaries. So you are going to learn boundaries with this transit, which is amazing because we can't like, it's very important that we protect ourselves, that we are like there is boundaries, not just on a physical level, but on a spiritual level as well. Like we have to be protecting ourselves. We have to be saying no. We have to learn the words no. We have to put our needs first. And that's exactly what this transit is going to do, because Aries is selfish. And selfish can be seen in good. Like there are ways that selfish can be seen as bad, but also selfish can be very, very good, you know. And when we have boundaries, we are like more in our power, we are more in our autonomy, because if we don't have boundaries, everything's getting pulled from us. We are leaking everything everywhere, and we cannot be who we are supposed to be. And like Aries is very much about like leadership. So this is where I do see like, again, women in leadership. You know, it's gonna change how like business is done moving forward. And Neptune is all about unconditional love. Aries is leadership. Leading very much from the heart is going to be it's gonna be big for this transit. So yeah, as I said, I want to touch a bit on the nervous system and the role that the nervous system plays in this transit as well. So the goddess worship um is also about like, worshiping oneself, worshiping your body, and you know, worshiping like female, like women being worshipped, um and if we go back to that Saturn and Neptune conjunction that's happening, and we have to release, we are going to old conditionings, old identities being dissolved. That's very much like, like the nervous system role for women to change, to evolve, to grow. We have to be very much working with our nervous system. And women's nervous system is different from men's nervous system. So for us to evolve, like the nervous system is getting spoken out about so much, and that's very much again on point with transits that are happening. We have Pluto in Aquarius. We will have Uranus moving into Gemini soon enough. Like Aquarius is like the nervous system trauma. And Uranus is the ruler of Aquarius, which again, nervous system and trauma. So the nervous system, female's nervous system, are very much created differently. So if we want to create a regulated nervous system, we have to it's oxytocin that we want to create in the brain, okay? So oxytocin is stimulated through pleasure. through touch, through connection. Um, so, like it's not about doing tasks, it's not having lists or goals, because that's very much like what the male nervous system is thrives on. And that creates dopamine, which helps with testosterone. But dopamine actually reduces oxytocin. So if we think of like, right, I lead a business and I have loads of tasks that I need to do, and I'm ticking these all off. I'm getting burnt out while doing it because my body is not able for this, because I don't have the same energy every day like a man would. But that dopamine hit is reducing my oxytocin. So it's keeping me in a dysregulated state. So this again, we come back to goddess worship, right? To regulate our nervous system, right? Because a woman she needs pleasure. She needs touch. And that's exactly what the goddess worship is. It's about touching yourself, being in your body, receiving touch from yourself, from others, loving touch, obviously, from pleasure, like pleasure in the body, pleasure in things that you do. And Neptune and Pluto are like getting very close to an exact sextile. Well, it won't be for a while just yet. But Pluto is in Aquarius, and Pluto is all about like, like your soul's power, your soul desire. It's death, rebirth, transformation. And Aquarius is all about the nervous system and trauma. So Pluto in Aquarius, like transforming your nervous system, and the goddess worship, so Neptune in Aries, working together in harmony, you know. So again, like working with your nervous system um to help you like create this new life, to help you see yourself as creator, to help you reclaim your sovereignty, to reclaim your power. And this is all what the goddess worship is. It's about women being in power, and not power over, but leading through soul power, leading through their heart, by being in their body, by worshipping the goddess. And yeah, I will do an episode. That's what I was like, I felt really called to do a separate episode on like how you can worship the goddess. And I will do that over the next 2 weeks. But yeah, I am going to leave that there. And do I have anything else to say? No, no more, nothing else to say except devote time to yourself, to your body, to the goddess, because you are the goddess, you are creator, and this is your time to uncover your divinity. It's not going to happen like right now. Takes time. This is a 14-year transit for like now till 2039, but however, we have that Saturn and Neptune transit happening on the 20th, beginning on the 20th of February, which is only 3 days after the eclipse. It's all divinely timed. Yes, so I am going to leave that there. And again, I would really love if you enjoyed this episode to let me know, to like the comments, to like the episode, to comment on it, and subscribe to my YouTube channel or my Spotify channel. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope you enjoyed.